In the city of Oak Haven, where the grass is green but the hearts are often cold, lived a girl named Naya. She was 10 years old, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that had seen far too much for someone so young. Naya didn't talk much. She moved like a ghost through the hallways of Westfield Prep, a school where money usually bought you a pass to be cruel. But Naya had a secret. She wasn't just an orphan from the system anymore. She was the daughter of a man whose name was whispered in the back rooms of Seoul and the high-rises of New York. His name was Mr. Han. He was a man of silence and steel, a leader of an empire that most people only saw in movies. To the world, he was a businessman. To Naya, he was Appa. He had found her when she was at her lowest, and he had promised her that the world would never break her again. But there are some people in this world who think they are kings simply because they have never met a real emperor. On a Tuesday morning, 3 boys decided to test that promise. They didn't see a protected child. They saw a girl who looked different, a girl they thought was weak because she was quiet. They were about to make the biggest mistake of their lives, and the ripples of that mistake would soon tear their comfortable world apart. The morning started with a heavy fog that clung to the school windows. Naya sat at her desk, her mind focused on her math homework. She wore her hair in beautiful, intricate braids that her appa had helped her with. Yes, the great Mr. Han, a man who could command 1,000 soldiers, had sat on a small stool the night before, his large, scarred hands moving with surprising gentleness. He had watched a video tutorial 6 times just to make sure he got the tension right. A princess must always carry her crown, he had said in his deep, gravelly voice. Naya felt that love in every twist of her hair. But in the back of the room, Leo, Tyler, and Jax were whispering. Leo was the leader, a boy who thought his father's position as a city judge made him untouchable. He hated Naya's quietness. He hated that she never flinched when he tripped her in the hall. He hated that she looked like she belonged to something bigger than his petty games. "Look at those ropes in her hair," Leo sneered, loud enough for the class to hear. "This isn't a jungle, Naya. We have standards here." The teacher, Mr. Miller, didn't even look up from his newspaper. He was a man who preferred a quiet life over a fair one. He allowed the poison to spread because he was too lazy to stop it. Naya kept her head down, her heart racing like a trapped bird. She knew the rules. Don't react, don't give them the satisfaction. But Leo wasn't looking for a reaction. He was looking for a victim. When the bell for recess rang, Naya tried to stay behind, but Mr. Miller shooed her out. "Go get some fresh air, Naya. Stop being so gloomy," he said, not realizing he was sending a lamb into a den of wolves. Naya walked to the far corner of the playground, near the old oak tree. It was her sanctuary. She pulled out a small book, a gift from her aka about the history of the Joseon dynasty. She found comfort in stories of warriors who fought for honor. Suddenly, a shadow fell over her page. She didn't have to look up to know who it was. Leo, Tyler, and Jax stood there, blocking the sun. Tyler was holding a carton of chocolate milk, his face twisted in a mocking grin. "That hair is a distraction, Naya," Leo said, his voice dripping with fake authority. "My dad says people who look like you bring down the property value of the school. We decided we're going to help you fit in." Naya stood up, tucking her book under her arm. "I don't want your help, Leo. Please let me go." But they didn't move. Jax, the biggest of the 3, stepped forward and grabbed her backpack, swinging it away. Naya's eyes widened. Inside that bag was a burner phone her appa had given her for emergencies. "Give it back," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Leo laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Or what? You're going to tell your imaginary parents? We checked your file, Naya. You're just a charity case. Nobody is coming for you." What happened next was a blur of cruelty that would haunt the witnesses for years. Leo reached out and grabbed one of Nia's braids, yanking her head back with such force that she gasped in pain. "Let go!" she cried, her hands flying up to protect her scalp. But Tyler didn't stop there. He opened the milk carton and poured the thick, sticky liquid over her head. The chocolate ran down her braids, ruining the work her appa had done with such care. Nia didn't scream. She didn't cry. She remembered what her appa told her. Fear is a choice, Nia. Never let them see it. This only made Leo angrier. He wanted her to beg. He wanted her to break. "You think you're better than us?" he hissed. He pushed her hard, and Nia fell back against the rough bark of the oak tree. As she tried to stand, Jax tripped her and she landed face first in the dirt. Her knees scraped and her palms bled, but she scrambled to her feet. That's when Leo saw the watch on her wrist. It was a sleek, black digital watch, a piece of technology far more advanced than anything the other kids had. He didn't know it was a GPS tracker and a direct line to Mr. Hand's private security team. "Nice watch," Leo said, reaching for it. "I think I'll take that as payment for the trouble you've caused." Nia pulled her arm back. "No, my appa gave me this." Leo's eyes flashed with malice. "Your appa isn't here, but I am." Leo lunged at her, and Nia tried to dodge, but Jax caught her arms and pinned them behind her back. It was 3 against 1, 14-year-old strength against a 10-year-old girl. Tyler laughed as he began to pull at her braids, unraveling the intricate patterns. "Stop it! You're hurting me!" Nia finally cried out, the pain becoming too much. But the boys were caught in a fever of bullying, fueled by the silence of the playground supervisors who were busy chatting on the other side of the field. Leo took a pair of craft scissors he had stolen from the art room. "Since you won't follow the rules, I'll just give you a haircut," he sneered. He grabbed a handful of hair and snip. A long, beautiful braid fell into the mud. Nia felt a part of her soul wither. That hair represented the only time she felt truly safe, the moment she spent with her father. Snip, snip. 2 more braids fell. The other children on the playground began to gather, some whispering, some recording on their phones, but none stepping in to help. The silence was the loudest part of the attack. Finally, Leo pushed her down one last time and kicked dirt over her. "There. Now you look like the trash you are," he said. The boys walked away, high-fiving each other, feeling like giants. Nia sat in the dirt, her hair a ruined mess, her clothes stained with chocolate and mud. But she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at her watch. With a trembling finger, she pressed the hidden button on the side. In a glass-walled office 40 floors above the city, the silence was broken by a low, rhythmic pulsing. Mr. Hand was sitting at his desk, reviewing a shipment manifest, when the light on his console turned red. He didn't jump, he didn't gasp, he simply went still. His eyes, cold as the depths of the ocean, fixed on the map appearing on his screen. The signal was coming from Westfield Prep, Nia's emergency beacon. Beside him, his 2 most trusted men, Min and June, moved instantly. They didn't need orders. They had worked for Han for 20 years. They knew the look in his eyes. It was the look of a man who was about to dismantle a world. "Bring the car," Han said. His voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of a thunderclap. "And June, I want everything on that school. Every teacher, every student, every parent. I want to know who was on that playground." As he stood up, he adjusted his cufflinks. He looked like a perfect gentleman, a man of high society, but underneath the suit was a man who had built his empire on the bones of those who crossed him. He had spent his life being a monster so that Nia would never have to see one. And now, someone had brought out the monster. As he walked toward the elevator, the air in the room seemed to freeze. "They touched my daughter," he murmured. "They have no idea what they have started." Back at the school, Nia was finally brought into the nurse's office. Mr. Miller stood there, looking nervous now that he saw the physical damage. "It was just a bit of roughhousing, Nia," he said, trying to downplay the situation. "Boys will be boys. We'll give them a detention and you can go home early." Nia didn't look at him. She sat on the crinkly paper of the exam table, her eyes fixed on the door. "My appa is coming," she said quietly. Mr. Miller sighed, rolling his eyes. "Naya, we've tried to contact your guardian, but the number on file goes to a corporate office. We'll just call a taxi for you." Suddenly, the heavy oak doors of the school's main entrance didn't just open, they seemed to groan under the pressure of someone's arrival. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway, rhythmic and purposeful. The school secretary, a woman who had worked there for 30 years, suddenly went pale. She saw 3 black SUVs skid to a halt in the circular driveway, blocking the path of the principal's car. Men in dark suits stepped out, moving with military precision. They didn't look like parents. They looked like an invading army. At the center of them was Mr. Han. He didn't wait to be buzzed in. He walked through the doors and the atmosphere of the school changed instantly. The laughter in the hallways died. The teachers stopped talking. It was as if a predator had entered a field of sheep. Principal Higgins, a man who loved his title more than his students, came out of his office to confront the intruders. "Excuse me, you can't just barge in here. This is a private institution," he shouted, puffing out his chest. Mr. Han didn't even look at him. He kept walking until he reached the nurse's station. When he saw Naya, saw the chocolate milk staining her clothes, the dirt on her face, and the jagged, uneven places where her braids had been cut, he stopped. For 3 seconds, he was completely motionless. The men behind him, Min and Jun, felt the temperature drop. They knew that silence. It was the silence before a storm that levels cities. Han walked over to Naya and knelt in the dirt of the nurse's floor. He didn't care about his $1,000 suit. He reached out and gently tucked a stray piece of hair behind her ear. "Naya," he whispered, "I'm here." Naya finally let out a single sob and threw her arms around his neck. "They cut them, Appa. They cut the braids you made." Han closed his eyes for a moment, his jaw tight enough to crack stone. "I know, my little star. I know." He stood up, turning to face Principal Higgins and Mr. Miller. His expression was no longer human. It was a mask of cold, calculated vengeance. "Who did this?" Han asked. His voice was low, but it filled the room like a physical pressure. Principal Higgins stammered, his bravado disappearing as he looked into Han's eyes. It was an unfortunate incident during recess. A few students, Leo, Tyler, and Jax. We are handling it internally. There's no need for this kind of display." Han stepped closer to Higgins, invading his personal space. "You call the assault of a child an unfortunate incident? You call the destruction of her dignity internal handling?" Higgins tried to regain his footing. "Now, look here. Leo's father is Judge Sterling. He's a major donor to this school. We have to be careful how we handle these things." Han smiled then, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was the smile a wolf gives to a trap it has already escaped. "A judge," Han repeated. "How convenient. He should know all about the law then, and you should know about liability." He turned to Jun. "Close the school. No one leaves. Not the teachers, not the students, not the staff. And find the 3 boys. Bring them to the cafeteria. Now." Higgins gasped. "You can't do that. That's kidnapping. That's illegal." Han didn't even turn around as he walked with Naya toward the cafeteria. "Call the police then, Mr. Higgins. I would love for them to see what happens when a school fails to protect a child." Within 10 minutes, the school was in a state of total lockdown. But it wasn't the school's alarm system. It was Han's men. They stood at every exit, their arms crossed, their faces expressionless. In the cafeteria, the 3 boys, Leo, Tyler, and Jax, were sitting at a table, looking confused and slightly frightened. They had been pulled out of their classrooms by men who didn't listen to their protests. Their parents had been called, told there was an emergency, and were already racing toward the school. Han sat across from the boys, Naya standing beside him. He looked at the boys, not with anger, but with the cold curiosity of a scientist looking at an insect. "You like to cut things," Han said, placing the stolen craft scissors on the table. They had been recovered from Leo's backpack. Leo, trying to act tough, looked at his friends. "My dad is going to have you arrested. You can't touch us." Han leaned forward. "I don't need to touch you, Leo. I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to show you what happens when the world stops protecting you." Just then, the cafeteria doors burst open. Judge Sterling, Leo's father, rushed in, followed by the parents of Tyler and Jax. What is the meaning of this? Who is responsible for this outrage? Judge Sterling was a man used to being the most powerful person in any room. He was tall, wore an expensive watch, and had a voice that boomed with authority. He marched up to the table, ignoring the men in suits, and pointed a finger at Mr. Han. "You. I want these men out of this school immediately. Do you have any idea who I am?" Mr. Han didn't stand up. He didn't even blink. He waited for the judge to finish his rant. Then he signaled to Jun. Jun opened a sleek laptop and turned the screen toward the judge. On the screen was a detailed map of the judge's financial life. Offshore accounts, a secret property in the Caymans, and a series of emails detailing favors done for local construction companies. The judge's face went from bright red to a sickly, ghostly white in 3 seconds. His hand, still pointing at Han, began to tremble. Where did you get this?" he whispered. Han leaned back, his eyes like ice. "I own the bank that handles your private transactions, Sterling, and I own the firm that just bought your mortgage. In 1 hour, I can make you a hero or a prisoner. The choice depends entirely on how we handle the next few minutes." The other parents, seeing the judge collapse into a chair, suddenly lost their fire. They realized they weren't dealing with a grieving father. They were dealing with the ocean, and they were in a very small boat. "What do you want?" Tyler's father asked, his voice shaking. He was a wealthy businessman, but he knew real power when he felt it. Han looked at Nia, then back at the boys. "My daughter was humiliated. She was told she didn't belong. She was told no one was coming for her." He looked at the boys, who were now sobbing quietly. "I want them to understand that their actions have weight. I want them to see the ruin they have brought upon their families." Han turned to Jun. "Tell the board of directors that the school's funding has been pulled. Effective immediately, Westfield Prep is under new management, my management." Principal Higgins, who was standing in the corner, nearly fainted. "You can't buy a school in 10 minutes. Han looked at him. "I didn't buy it. I foreclosed on the debt you've been hiding for 5 years. I am now the owner of the land, the building, and your contract." He looked back at the judge. "Sterling, your son will be expelled, but that's not enough. You will take him to the community center in the city every Saturday for the next year. He will clean floors. He will serve food to the people he thinks are trash. If he misses a day, those emails go to the district attorney." The room was silent, save for the sound of the boys weeping. The parents sat in shock, their lives dismantled in a matter of moments. But Han wasn't finished. He turned to Mr. Miller, the teacher who had ignored Nia's suffering. "And you," Han said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You took a vow to protect and teach. Instead, you chose silence. You are fired, Mr. Miller, and I will make sure that no school, from here to the coast, ever hires a man who lets children be hunted in his sight." Miller tried to speak, but no words came out. He simply slumped against the wall. Han stood up, taking Nia's hand. "We are leaving now." As they walked toward the door, Nia stopped. She looked back at Leo, who was staring at his hands. "Leo," she called out. The boy looked up, his face tear-stained. "My hair will grow back," Nia said, her voice steady and clear. "But you will always have to live with the fact that you needed 3 people to beat up 1 girl. I hope you find some courage one day." She turned and walked out with her father, her head held high. In the car, the tension finally left Nia's body. She leaned against her appa, and he wrapped a heavy cashmere coat around her shoulders. "Are you okay, my star?" he asked, his voice returning to the gentle tone he used only for her. "I'm okay now, appa. But are you really going to lose all that money because of me?" Han looked out the window at the passing city lights. To him, the millions he had spent to buy the school and the debt were nothing compared to a single tear on Nia's cheek. Money is just paper. Power is just a tool. The only thing that matters in this world is family. I would burn this whole city down to keep you safe. Never forget that. He signaled to Min, who was driving. "Take us to the salon, the one owned by Madame Vera. Tell her I need her best stylist and I don't care what time it is." As the SUV sped through the night, Nia watched the reflection of her father in the glass. She knew he was a dangerous man. She knew people feared him, but she also knew that his heart was a fortress built specifically for her. The following weeks saw a massive shift in Oakhaven. The story of what happened at Westfield Prep leaked out, though the names of the investors remained a mystery. The school was completely restructured. A new principal was hired, a woman known for her work in social justice and student safety. A new curriculum was introduced, focusing on empathy and history. The boys, Leo, Tyler, and Jax, were gone, and for the first time in a long time, the hallways felt light. Nia returned to school, but she was different now. She didn't walk like a ghost anymore. She walked like a girl who knew she was loved. She wore her hair in a new style, short and modern, a warrior cut, as Madame Vera called it. She became a leader in her own right, standing up for other kids who were being teased. When people asked her who her father was, she would simply smile and say, "He's a businessman, but he's also a hero." Little did they know, the businessman was currently dismantling a rival gang that had tried to move into Nia's school zone. Mr. Han's protection wasn't just about school bullies, it was absolute. However, the world of the Korean Mafia is never truly quiet. While Nia was finding her place at school, Mr. Han was dealing with a new threat, a rival organization from the north, led by a man named Kim Dae-young, had heard about Han's distraction with his daughter. They thought he was becoming soft. They thought his focus on a schoolgirl meant his guard was down. Kim Dae-young was a man of the old school. He believed that family was a weakness to be exploited. He began to send men to watch the school, to watch the house. He didn't realize that for Mr. Han, Nia wasn't a weakness, she was his purpose, and a man with a purpose is the most dangerous kind of predator. Han sat in his study, looking at a series of grainy photos his security team had intercepted. Men in gray coats, standing across the street from Westfield Prep, his grip tightened on his glass of tea. "They never learn," he whispered. "They think they can use her to get to me." He looked at men. "Prepare the ghost protocol. If they even breathe in her direction, I want their entire lineage erased." Nia, though young, was observant. She noticed the extra security. She noticed that Jun now walked her to the very door of her classroom, and that a janitor who looked suspiciously like one of Han's bodyguards was always nearby. She wasn't scared, she was curious. One evening, as she sat with Han in their garden, she asked, "Appa, are there more monsters coming?" Han looked at her, surprised by her directness. He put down his book and took her hand. "The world has many people who want what others have, Nia. They think that by hurting what I love, they can take what I've built. But they are mistaken." Nia nodded slowly. "I want to help. I don't want to just be protected. I want to be strong like you." Han's heart swelled with pride, but also a touch of sadness. He wanted her to be a child, but he knew the world she lived in wouldn't allow it forever. "Then we will start your training," he said. "Not just with your mind, but with your body. You will learn to see the threats before they see you. You will learn that a Kim never bows." The training began. Every morning before school, Nia worked with Jun in their private gym. She learned the basics of self-defense, how to use an opponent's weight against them, and how to stay calm under pressure. But more importantly, she learned the sight. Han taught her how to read a room, how to notice the person who doesn't fit in, how to spot the car that has passed the house 3 times. Nia was a natural. Her years in the foster system had already made her hyper-aware. Han just gave that awareness a focus. One afternoon at the library, Nia noticed a man in a gray coat. He was pretending to read a newspaper, but his eyes were fixed on her. Instead of panicking, Nia remembered her training. She didn't run. She walked calmly to the librarian and asked for help finding a book in the security and surveillance section, loud enough for the man to hear. Then she walked to a window and signaled Jun. The man in the gray coat didn't realize he was no longer the hunter. He now was the prey. Within minutes, the man in the gray coat was surrounded, not by police, but by 4 of Han's men who appeared like shadows from between the bookshelves. They didn't make a scene. They simply ushered him out the back door. Han was waiting in a car in the alleyway. When the man was brought before him, Han didn't say a word. He just showed him a photo of Kim Dae-jung. "Tell your master," Han said, his voice cold enough to crack the air, "that his men are easy to find. Tell him that every time he sends someone to look at my daughter, I will take a piece of his territory. Today, I am taking his docks in Incheon. Tomorrow, it will be his home." The man was released, shaking with terror. He ran back to his boss with the message. Kim Dae-jung was furious, but he was also starting to realize his mistake. He had thought Han was soft. He didn't realize that Han's love for Nia had given him a new, sharper edge. The businessman was gone. The dragon of Seoul had returned. The conflict escalated quickly. Kim Dae-jung, desperate and feeling the walls close in, decided on a final, reckless move. He wouldn't just watch Nia, he would take her. He planned a strike during the school's annual winter gala. It was a high-profile event with hundreds of parents and security. He thought the chaos of the crowd would be his cover. He sent 20 of his best men disguised as caterers and security. But what he didn't know was that Han had written the security plan for the gala himself. Every caterer was one of Han's soldiers. Every valet was a trained marksman. The gala was a trap, and Han was the bait. As the music played and the children laughed, Nia stood by her father's side, wearing a dress of deep crimson. She looked like a princess, but her eyes were scanning the room. She saw the signal before anyone else did, a slight nod from a man by the kitchen doors. "Appa," she whispered, "the graycoats are here." Han didn't move. He took a sip of his champagne. "I know, my star. Stay behind Jun." Suddenly, the lights went out. The room was plunged into darkness and screams began to erupt. But the screams didn't come from the intruders. They came from the intruders. Han's men moved in the dark like ghosts, using night vision goggles and silent takedowns. Nia didn't hide under a table. She stayed close to Jun, her heart pounding, but her mind clear. She saw a man lunging toward them from the shadows. Without thinking, she used the move Jun had taught her, a sharp strike to the knee, followed by a shove. The man tumbled into a table, and Jun finished him instantly. In the center of the room, a single spotlight clicked on. It illuminated Mr. Han, who was standing perfectly still, holding a silenced pistol. Across from him was Kim Dae-jung's top lieutenant. "You're late," Han said. The lieutenant didn't even have time to raise his weapon before he was disarmed and forced to his knees. The attack was over in less than 2 minutes. The guests didn't even know what happened. Most thought it was a brief power outage and a bit of theatrical performance for the gala. The aftermath was silence and total. Kim Dae-jung's organization vanished overnight. Some say they fled the country, others say they simply ceased to exist. In the world of the shadows, the message was clear. Nia Han was untouchable. If you touched her, you didn't just fight a man, you fought a god of vengeance. Han sat in his office the next morning, Nia sitting on the rug at his feet, playing with a set of traditional Korean chess pieces. "Is it over, Appa?" she asked. Han looked at her, his expression weary but satisfied. "That part is over, Nia. You did well. You showed great courage." Nia looked up at him. "I didn't do it to be brave. I did it because you're my family, and you told me we fight for family." Han realized then that he had succeeded in his greatest mission. He hadn't just saved a girl from the system, he had raised a lioness. She wasn't just his daughter, she was his legacy. And the story of the quiet girl and the dragon became a legend in Oak Haven. Nia grew up to be a brilliant young woman, graduating at the top of her class. She didn't go into the family business in the traditional sense. Instead, she became a high-profile human rights lawyer, specializing in the protection of foster children and victims of bullying. She used her father's resources to build a network of safe houses and schools across the country. She was still protected by Han's men, but she was also her own shield. Mr. Han, now older and with more gray in his hair, was her biggest supporter. He sat in the front row of every court case, every gala, every speech. He was still a man of shadows, but he found his greatest joy in the light his daughter brought to the world. He had taught her how to fight so that she could build a world where fighting wasn't the only option. On the day of Nia's law school graduation, they returned to the old oak tree at Westfield Prep. The school was now a world-renowned institution for leadership and ethics. The tree was still there, its branches wide and strong. Nia stood by the trunk, looking at the spot where she had once sat in the dirt, covered in chocolate milk and tears. She reached up and touched a small scar on her temple, a reminder of that day. "It feels like a lifetime ago," she said. Hans stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "It was the day you found your voice, Nia, and the day I found my soul." They stood in silence for a long time, watching the new generation of students run across the playground. There were no bullies here. There was only the sound of laughter and the rustle of leaves in the wind. The dragon had done his job. The princess was now a queen. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the grass, Nia looked at her father. "What happens now, Appa?" Hans smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached his eyes. "Now, my star, we live. We have fought the battles and we have won the peace. The world knows who you are and they know you are loved. That is the greatest victory of all." They walked back toward the black SUV waiting at the gate. As Nia got into the car, she looked at her watch, the same one she had used to call for help all those years ago. It was a symbol of her past, but also a promise for her future. She knew that no matter where she went, no matter what challenges she faced, she would never be alone. She was the daughter of the dragon, and she carried the fire of his love within her. And as for the bullies of the world, they had learned their lesson. You never know who a quiet girl belongs to. You never know when you're beating up the wrong person, because sometimes the person you think is nobody is actually everything to someone very, very dangerous. And that, my children, is the end of our tale. Remember it well. Be kind, for you never know the strength of the love that stands behind the person in front of you. Always choose mercy, but never forget your power. Good night.